Good morning.
Good morning.
Little different setup today.
Yeah.
Got the fire going. Been talking about doing this for well, not exactly like this, but something like this since the original format like this is called fireside chats.
That's
Like,
right.
it'd be funny if it was actually next to a fire.
Yeah.
So yeah, a little end of year holiday special. So
Before we begin, can I pull a Chris Snyder?
sure.
I love you.
I love you. I knew you were gonna do that. We already say Chris Snyder. It'd be funny to include that clip right here.
Yeah.
All right. Is that all you had to say?
That's all I had to say.
That was good. All right. Had to get back on topic.
Back on topic.
So it was interesting going through trying to figure out how to frame up this episode. Going through like going with ChatGPT, seeing what the ideas could be, and one of them, a couple of them are things you already done, such as grow or die. I was like,
Right.
that's funny that was the last episode. Is that so?
Yep.
Covered that topic, I guess, but
Beat you to it, so to speak.
yeah. So I think a good way to start this is reflecting over the past year. So like wins, lessons, all that sort of stuff. Because a year is a long time.
Yeah.
Right? Even 6 months ago, things were really different.
Yeah.
So a year ago, things were very different.
Very different. Yeah.
And we were talking with Sean, our CMO, about the little thing you had written in the top of the blackboard in the office that said, it feels like things are starting to roll.
Yeah.
That was about a year ago.
About a year ago, exactly. Yeah.
So, right from there to here,
Yeah.
how did you think things were feeling like they were starting to roll then? And how has that gone?
Yeah. Not as well as I thought. We weren't rolling as well as I thought we were rolling, for a whole host of reasons. I think that in hindsight, there was a number of things that we were dealing with not this summer, but last summer, entering into the fall, and we were grinding, right? You could feel we were grinding, in particular in terms of just trials and getting people onto the platform, and getting people to take full advantage of the platform, which we're now starting to call the ecosystem. And I felt going into coming right out of Thanksgiving that we were starting to see the efforts of all the writing and work we've been doing and all the blogs, et cetera. In hindsight, I think what we saw was just our traditional December and January. They're always really strong, because then in February, things went back to grind. And it even went worse for a second because I was disappointed that we didn't lean more into taking advantage of the fact that we know December and January for trials are always good because people are thinking about annual planning. They're out there looking and they discover us, and so they've been for forever. They've been our best months in terms of trials and people, getting up and running on the platform. And so I was a little disappointed because I told the marketing team, you should be leaning into this. We should be allocating more capital to Google and LinkedIn and things like that. And they reacted to it with, okay, boom, right? We're going to just do a bunch of different things. And so they did a bunch of different things. And then all of a sudden, trials went up like we've never seen it before, but they were not good trials, right? So we wasted a lot of money. And so and we didn't know it until like a month and a half in. So that March, April, little bit into May period was kind of like a big bummer, because we got all excited. I even told the board, I think we finally cracked the nut. And the reality was, no, we were just nuts. So that was one of those lessons learned. And that was a hard lesson for the year because we, basically threw away, a couple $100,000 for all practical purposes, which you never want to do. But even worse than that, you went from this moment of thinking we finally cracked the nut to no, we didn't crack the nut. And so that was tough. And then we hadn't done a price increase in a couple of years, and we were going to do a price increase. And then we decided not to do that. And so, so that was a thing. And then we thought that we've never focused on expansion. And this year we focused on expansion. And we found out that it wasn't as easy to really, once we started to focus on it, it wasn't as easy as we thought it should be in order to help people understand the power of getting everybody on the platform. So, in short, we thought this year would be another really strong growth year, 80%, and will end up being closer to 50%. And so that makes it, not the year we had hoped to have. There's a lot of other things obviously associated with this past year that are interesting and wonky. And I think just the whole nature of the economy and the elections and people being risk off and really hesitant on hiring. We see that a lot of companies are pretty flat this year in terms of hiring. So, generally speaking, I think this was a tougher year than expected.
So what do you think the hardest lesson was of the year for us?
I think hardest lesson of the year, it's a good question, really. I mean, in terms of what does that mean, hardest lesson? I was probably more optimistic. I said it that when we put the budget in place for the year, I told the board I thought there was less than 50% chance that we'd hit it. And in hindsight, I should have just said, no, if there's less than 50% chance, because it's what I teach, right? You want to put forth a plan for the year that you think you got 50% chance of doing better than, 50% chance of doing worse than, because as we've talked about on, in these, in this podcast before, it's just as, you know, it's just as dangerous. I don't love that word, but it's just as dangerous to be
Detrimental?
conservative as it is to be aggressive. Because if you have an aggressive budget and you don't hit it, you'll likely overhire. And if you have a conservative budget and you smash it out of the water, you've likely underhired, and you're going to put a lot of stress on, the system, on the people, right? On the humans, as we like to say.
And being 50-50 is about as accurate as you can get being in the middle of the thing.
Yeah.
As you're aiming for accuracy.
Yeah. You just got to be honest, right? You got to face your reality, whatever your reality is likely to be. So I think in hindsight, as a leader, I should have said no. We need to crank this back down to whatever we think is 50-50. And if I had done that, I probably would have budgeted for 60%. Because, I thought we could do the price increase, but, we chose not to do the price increase because we think that there's a better way for us to structure pricing, and that's a thing that we're working on right now. And that effort's been something that we've been working on for a year. It's been harder than we thought it would be to sort of change up the model. But I feel pretty darn good about it, and we're out there, talking and getting feedback on what we're thinking about right now. So, in hindsight, the expansion was, I didn't have any data to assume that we could do better on expansion than we were doing, other than the fact that we'd never done it. So it's like, well, if we've never done it, why, I think we should be able to do this. But I think that, what the lesson coming out of the expansion was that we've not done as good a job as we should in terms of helping people understand the power of the entire platform, right? Because relatively speaking, most of our clients on average, only 20% of their employees are on the platform, and I just think the platform's so powerful when you get everybody on it. So I just thought, well, it's obvious, but the reality is no, we've got to explain it much better than we do. And we also need to do things to the platform that makes it more compelling to put everybody on there. And those are things that, we're working on, right? We're working on integrations. We started to roll out integrations because that's been something that people have said, hey guys, we want more integrations. And so that's a thing. We had a bunch of people, you've been giving me grief for years about mobile. So mobile's a thing that, we're working on
Since 2018.
since 2018 for what it's worth, right? And then there's also the, um, you know, there were there were there's a new, we call it a learning management portal. We've been working on for over a year, and deeply believing that that would also make the platform super compelling. And I thought we'd have that thing out by now, and we don't. Hopefully, it'll be in beta. It's in alpha, beta-ish, right? It's a small beta, and right now, but hopefully in the first quarter we'll have those things out. So, I think the platform will become the ecosystem will be much more compelling in 2025, and there's other things we're working on as well. Obviously, incorporating AI into the platform, and that's a huge, huge amount of work. But in hindsight, back to expansion, I thought we could have done better this year, and we didn't.
Do you think the majority of the issues? I know it. Right, I know what the answer is going to be here. But do you know what you think the majority of the issues lie in us not executing what we need to execute, or following what we teach, rather than not knowing what we're doing, or not understanding what we're doing or what to do?
We're doing the right things. It's just the pace.
No, I'm referring more like setting the right targets,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, one of them for sure, I did not practice what I preach.
Yeah.
Right. That's a fact. I think that, if you look at it, there's a product evolution, right? We were slower on the product evolution than we hoped to be. It took us longer to hire, to go find Sean, right? I think it took us 9 months for that search. The CTPO search was 6 to 9 months as well. So
Yeah.
they're just hard searches, right?
TTPO that's a big seat,
Right.
on 2 seats.
Yeah. And then, you look at it and, everybody, we had an investor meeting, with a group of investors we met with yesterday. And, there's a little bit of giving me some grief about how fast we're moving on certain things, and fair. I mean, it's all fair. I don't disagree with anything that, that they said, but the reality is, we built out the C-suite. We hired a bunch of amazing, product and engineering people last year. And it just takes time for everybody, because especially with what we're doing, it takes time for even super smart people to get up to speed and truly understand it. So I think, there's a whole host of things in there where, you feel like you should be able to move a little bit faster, but, it just takes time for people to get, onboarded and really understand what we're doing and why we do the things that we do. And for all the relationships, right? For, the communication stuff to get really super strong. Now, on the flip side, and maybe I'm pushing off answering your question completely, on the flip side, with all that change, right? We got 5 Great Place to Work awards, right? So that's like, that's amazing, right? Great Place to Work, parents, women, millennials, technology, and small, mid-sized business. That's,
Surprised you remembered all those.
yeah, that's unbelievable, right? And so,
Especially in remote work.
remote
Make it
work,
harder.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if you put it all together, I'm sure
Remote work, growth rate. I give you
growth rate,
control for both of those.
you can, yeah. It's like anything you can, you look at you know, you can never read the label from inside the jar, and, I'm in the jar in this conversation. And like you just said, I mean, if you really stand back and look at it, the growth rate, work from anywhere, all the progress that's being made, increasing the employee base by what, close to 50%, over 50%.
And restructuring internally in a lot of
and
places.
restructuring internally in a lot of places. Yeah.
Yeah. I think this year hasn't been, if you view things like or you view growth or speed or whatever
Right.
as a pyramid, velocity, sure.
Yeah.
And the vertical dimension of the pyramid is your velocity. It's like having that really wide, strong base allows you to have a taller pyramid
Yeah.
and a steadier velocity.
Mhm.
And I feel like this year's really been just building a, as you would say, damn good base for the pyramid.
Yeah.
And I feel we didn't hit the velocity as much as we wanted to this year, but I feel like our base is much, much stronger than I would have expected it to be a year ago.
Yeah.
So I think that's a win.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like, going to next year, you have that party that wants to, that is optimistic and thinks we're going to do really well at executing on certain things. But then it's like, well, how many times we're saying it's going to be a rough next 2 quarters, and it's been saying that for like 3 years now. So yeah, off of that point,
Yeah.
what do you think maybe the hardest lesson, basically going over that stuff? What do you think the biggest win of the year has been?
Well, pres preserving the culture.
I think we, if anything, improved. The culture's gotten stronger.
Yeah. Yeah. I think yeah, I think the culture is the culture, right? So, we're still the G tribe. But I do think if you think from the perspective of if you were to grade us along each of the core values, right? Obviously GSSD and team and resiliency and inquisitiveness and better version of the best versions of ourselves and extra mile. I think
ESSD meaning get smart stuff done. I
exactly.
don't think that's a
Yeah.
well known.
Sorry. Yeah. I think we, you know, we're in total, we did better on GSSD.
We have been consistently improving on GSSD throughout the year.
Yeah.
I don't think with any of the things that were
Right.
nailing it.
Yeah.
That's fine, right? Because they represent ideals and something you work towards. That's something that you,
Yeah.
right?
And then in terms of resilience, I think some people struggled with all the change. And a lot of the leaders were doing a good job of helping people understand, look, if you think this company is a place where stability is like just normal thing, that's not who we are, and it's not who we're going to be for the next,
Or stability is not our goal.
it's not our goal, and it won't be. Right. And it won't be for, it's just, when you believe you can be growing at, whether you say 80 to 100% or 50 to 80%, right. Or even 25 to 50%, because I think those are all, we have what it takes. The opportunity is significant enough and the market is big enough for us to be able to do 80 to 100 for a while more, and then to be able to do 50 to 80 for a while more, and then to be able to do 25 to 50 out a decade at least. And so when you have that type of growth, stability is not a thing that is going to be in a lot of places, right? There, you want to get it so that certain areas of the company, it's very right. It's stable because we say this is what we're going to do, when then we work on it, and then we conclude, and when we celebrate, and then boom, right? Sort of that 90-day marches, 90-day marches, 90-day marches. And, one of the things that I am proud of about, this year is that we moved the company from marching 90 days at a time to marching 180 to 270 days at a time. I mean, literally that, we're working on things that are 3 months, 6 months, and 9 months and long. And then next year, our goal is to start really, doing it like 3, 6, 9, 12, 3, 6, 9, 12, 3, 6, 9, 12. And so, uh, um, I'm proud of our ability to sort of play that type of game as opposed to just the 90-day game, right? So, we have the talent to do that.
Yeah, and it's like having segmentation and direction really helps with that lack of stability.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think long term it makes things more stable, but it's when you're going uphill, it gets tiring
Yeah.
and you want to sort of be sloppy. It's like, you just got to keep marching. When you're going downhill, you're running downhill. It's like, try not to trip yourself because that's not good.
Right.
Right. Take advantage of those moments, but you still got to stay focused. It's just a different game.
Yeah.
And when you're doing that over and over again,
Yeah.
you hopefully are approaching it with an anti-fragile mindset
Yes.
where you're learning from those struggles,
Yeah.
right? You're growing, you're becoming stronger, you're developing better
Yeah.
balance.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's back to sort of, I think we have gotten better in terms of resiliency. I think we have taken resiliency to the next level in terms of resiliency and anti-fragility, right? Understanding that, look, we know where we're going and we fall down, you get back up and you're like, hey, this is a lesson I need to learn because if I keep doing this, it's going to be hard to get there. But if I'm, okay, I got this lesson, it makes sense that I need to be better at this if I'm going to get from here to there, right? It's like, I'll use a really bad metaphor, right? We talk a lot about um, two of our favorite, three of our favorite metaphors, right? There's the ocean liner, right? There's crossing the ocean. There's the mountain, and then there's the forest, right? And to learn how to swim better when your job is scaling that mountain, no, right? So the game you're in, if you're clear on it, it's easier to figure out what we need to get better at from an anti-fragility perspective than just right trying to be, every time you make a mistake, what we got to get better. Well, some mistakes are more important than others. Some mistakes we need to learn better from. And I think just being clear about where you're going and what it's going to take um, makes it much easier to be anti-fragile because it's like, okay, no, I need to learn this. I'm climbing. We're on a 12,000-foot mountain, and our goal is to get, let's just say, you do an 18 or 20, scale an 18 or 20,000-foot mountain. These are things you just have to learn if you want to be able to go and take the next bigger challenge.
and as a leader, you have to be able to discern what is useful at the moment, what's not useful. Because if it's not useful, it's not worth getting hung up on.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, okay, that's fine. Yep.
So moving into the broader side of things,
Yeah.
it's been an interesting year, as
Mhm.
election years tend to be.
Yeah.
So I guess quickly sum up things that you trend. How would you categorize or name the theme of whatever of the year in the market, specifically for, I mean, business in general, but specifically for SaaS companies?
Well, I do think, one of the quips in the SaaS world was, especially in the venture side of the SaaS world, where people are going and assessing whether or not um, the business model, the opportunity is worth investing. The expression that was coined last year was 40 is the new 80. And what that meant was that the venture capital firms, you go back to 1919 and I mean 2019 and 2020, even a little bit into 2021, it was, they were all looking for, you need to be growing at 80% in order for it to be like, for this to be compelling. But because of the nature of the economy this year in particular, and the last couple of years, 40% is actually, 80 is the new 40. So 40% is now is a more sort of realistic bar for high performance. And so, I think generally speaking, um, you know, the economy has been especially with the elections. I think the economy, generally speaking, had a lot of what we call risk off, right? Where see people were like, hey, you just need to be a little bit more conservative. You can't sort of be high risk oriented, right? And so I think that's made its way into a lot of our world, right? As I alluded to earlier, you look at our clients with 100 plus employees, and they didn't grow. They didn't add a lot of employees last year versus the years before. The years before, it was our clients were adding 20%. in 18 and 19 and 20 and 21 on average, right? And I would tell you that it's closer to zero the last year to 18 months. Um, and I think part of it was just all this uncertainty around the elections, and
You're also deferring decisions,
yeah,
right? Waiting for to see what happens there, and then it's like goes one way, goes another way.
and it would have been, I mean, it would have been fascinating. We don't know, right? There's sort of an alternative world once, if Harris won, you know, would the markets afterwards reacted, the same as they did? Um, my guts, they wouldn't have.
It probably reacts inversely.
I don't know, but I don't want
I mean,
to.
I totally. Is this like right? If you're just waiting and you're hesitant on something,
I don't want to get political, but I do think that the Democrat, when the Democrats controlled a lot of the decisions that were being made, you saw more and more leaning into government being the solution rather than, sort of leaning into the private markets providing solutions. And so, I think you look back at the last year and a lot of the job growth was on the government side. And, I think most people, if you want to be really objective about it, um, would most learned people, right, that really understand the nature of economics would appreciate the fact that, there's a reason why, capitalistic systems tend to perform better over the long run. Because the marketplace is much more efficient at like, that's bullshit. And no, we're not going to fund that. Right. Whereas the government just says, hey, we think this is a good idea. And so it's not subject to the same level of positive and negative feedback loops and pressure. And so I think that,
and you're just opening up the system a little bit more.
yeah, yeah,
Whether it could go in a bad direction, it's going to go in that way
yeah.
faster.
But I think the response by the market has been, hey, now maybe we can start to see more and more capital dedicated to flowing into things that may or may not work. But when you spread this around a million or billion decisions, right? We know that's why, capitalism has performed historically much better than communism in terms of creating, wealth and ultimately, healthy societies. So I'm biased, but that's my perspective.
Should write a book on that.
Should.
Little awkward silence of foreshadowing.
Well, we talked about work.
It's there. It's on the website. So
Yeah.
it's no secret.
Yep. Hopefully it'll be out April or May right now. It's taking longer to get out, but well, damn close.
Started teasing it last April.
Or before that.
I know we're like publicly very much teasing it at the US conference.
Yeah.
So that was fun. Some people are like, when's the book coming out? And they're like, well, we say June. It's not coming out in June. I think, what do you mean? I'm like, I know it's not going to come out in June. I think why I was thinking, I'm like, I don't know. But
I feel good about it now.
it's a better book than it would have been.
Oh, far better.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's good. Obviously, the election market stuff is very industry dependent. Some industries, right, it's good. Some it's bad. Like solar, for example.
Right.
It's like that's gone down.
Yeah. I actually haven't paid a lot of attention to
I haven't paid a lot of attention
which
to it.
stocks and which industries or which sectors have
Like obviously on aggregate,
Yeah.
it's gone up.
Yeah.
Solar's thing. I mean, I don't want to get completely into this, but like solar is an interesting one. 'Cause
Yes.
like obviously Tesla is very involved in solar.
Right.
So it's like, that's kind of, if you just want to laugh at something,
Right.
like that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Not obviously not that they care, but just an interesting little glimpse into that sort of world.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Obviously, we're in a weird period right now. What do you think is going to be the interesting things to look for market wise going into next year, and things that probably will play out, Q1 ish.
Well, I mean, there's lots of things that are going to be interesting to watch. It's going to be interesting to watch, sort of the confirmation processes on all the nominees. Um, it's going to be fascinating to watch, Doge over the next, you know, 18 plus months to see whether or not, because this is going to be, right?
I mean, that's big when you were
This is
talking
going to be
about
epic.
the shift of government, like government being a bigger employer
Yeah.
or federal government being a bigger employer.
Yeah.
And this is like, I mean, this is the most significant act to that,
Yeah.
since I can remember.
Yeah. Yeah. So it'll be fascinating to watch this. I'm rooting for them. I think we need to be more efficient on the government side. And I think, once again, it's my partisan perspective, but I think we need to let the animal spirits, do their thing as much as possible. Obviously, there's laws and, we do not want to favor companies that are doing bad things for the environment, for the world, for people, et cetera, right? But there's a lot of laws already that exist to stop that from happening. And
We talk about this a lot, but it's going to be a lot harder to do that as everything becomes more public facing, information's more available,
yeah,
right? It's like you're not gonna be able to play that game very long. I
yeah,
was just talking to a friend about it recently. We were talking about he did his levels assessment thing.
yes,
And we're talking about CEOs being on average,
levels of ego.
yeah, levels of ego.
Yeah,
And where CEOs typically lie on that.
yeah,
It's going to be a lot harder to be a lower level, just push stuff through
yes,
to try to milk out everything in 2 years.
yeah,
That's not gonna be a very viable option.
yeah,
And so I think that should, in addition to all those laws and everything, help to correct a lot of those bad practices that we see in the business world.
yeah,
So I think that will be a thing. And obviously we're doing stuff on our end to promote good behavior
yeah, yeah,
and sort
and
of
help people understand how to assess levels of ego and help them understand why it's important for our leaders to have relatively well-developed levels of ego because the higher more developed their egos are, the less likely they'll be subject to biases and in doing things that are actually not in the long-term interest of society.
and
And
be able to do that more quickly for these, right? Take in all that information, understand things a lot better so you can make well-informed decisions
yeah,
more decisively,
yes.
right? I think that's a big thing that doesn't get talked about enough in that sense.
Yeah, and that's back to Work 9.0, there's a whole chapter on this in there, right, in terms of helping people. I love Lovinger's model, and, there are a lot of other models out there, all the way from, you know, Keegan to, Gartner Cook to, Wilber's integral theory. There's a bunch of different, models out there that helps people think about, but the reality is that there are hierarchies. And, and I think that both on the public and on the private side, you know, part of the reason why I wrote the book is we're entering into the age of understanding, and I believe we need to be more understanding of who we are, where we are, why we do the things that we do, and then I deeply believe in frameworks that help us understand and evolve, right? This is where I am, and I want if you want to take it to that next level, to the next level, to the next level, what do I need to do? What do I need to look at? How, where am I deficient? Where do I have room for growth? And so, this is a big, work 9.0 is, there's in some respects, it's, part of the reasons it's taken as long as it has is because there's a lot in it, and I wanted to make sure people are going to give me grief over it. I know that. I'm going to things that I wrote are not going to be as well written as they should be. I haven't thought things through as much as as I could, especially from people who are super experts at some of the things that I write about. But I'd rather I'd rather put it out there and suffer from the slings and arrows
Learn from the
and learn from it and update my, frameworks or my thinking where appropriate. But, I'm willing to enter into the arena and push for people to be, um, better leaders.
I think that starts with the private side of things,
Mhm.
and then that affects the culture, and then that moves eventually over to the
There are
public
more
side.
people employed on the private side than the public side, thankfully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, from the I mean, that's objective, that's clear.
Yeah.
But then I also think that people don't appreciate the implications that the private side has on their daily lives.
Yeah.
'Cause I think people weighted on the public side of things, like the government's responsible for whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, that's downstream from other things.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of people are, I would say most people are unhappy with the state of general politics, feeling like it's more immature and
Right.
all those things become a reality show.
Tribalistic and
Yeah,
level 3.75, maybe,
maybe.
you know,
Yeah, around there.
it's around
It'd
there.
be interesting to ask ChatGPT how it would assess that. Uh, but it's not a place where if you are a level 8 or 9 that you're gonna want to be.
Right.
It's not an effective vehicle for whatever you want to do,
Right.
for the problems you want to address.
Yeah.
And so I think and the private side isn't as much as it should be,
Right.
but that's why we believe in addressing the private side first,
Yes.
and then right that it will work its way over, and
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes in
Yeah. But
years.
I think that, we haven't talked a lot about AI yet, right? But I think that I'm an optimist on AI. I've said that before. And I think that whether you like it or not, right? Part of the new age is, is um, lifelong learning. Sorry, right?
That's part of it.
Yeah,
It's really part of any age, but now it's becoming much more imperative.
yeah. I think it's more. Yeah, maybe it's more obvious. Um, uh, Maybe it's more imperative, right? But you know, um, I think that small and mid-sized companies is one of the reasons why we're building out. I'm putting our money, my money, our money, where our mouths are. And part of the reason we're building, we're building out the knowledge management portal is because I believe that, back to the responsibilities of the private side, I believe we need to help people continuously learn and grow, whether it's ego, skills, and experiences, right? Uh, Self and others awareness, all the things that, we talk about. And, your education doesn't stop after high school or college. It's a forever thing. And so, that's an area where, I want us to help make a dent, is helping people continue to grow, and for us to be able to help them make that something they want and enjoy doing, as opposed to it feeling like drudgery.
Yeah, a path that you want to stay on, not a path you're confined to.
Yeah. Right. Go find those things that you're interested in, passionate about, and lean into your strengths, and aptitudes. Right. And you know, help companies become better at putting people into places where they can thrive, as opposed to, I'm just going to stick you in this seat here. And the reality is, if you go back to what I taught and explained in terms of structure, right? You're jamming square pegs into round holes. And it's just like either the peg's going to fracture or the hole's going to fracture. And so get better at putting people in the positions where they can thrive, and, where 90% of the time they go home at night and they're like, I love what I do, and I love who I do it with, and I love who I do it for.
Do you have I feel like you would have some number around this, but what percentage of the general population feels that way at the moment?
That where 90% of the time they go home and they love they love the day they just had.
Yeah.
That's a great. Once again, that'd be a good ChatGPT question.
Should we just look it up?
Yeah, I would have to do it. See if it could answer that one.
All right.
Do you have a gut?
No. 15%?
I was going to say 20%.
Right.
But, back to next year, I you know, I am optimist. I'm very optimistic that we have entered into a new age, the age of understanding, that we are going to actually make life better for more and more people. And that, you know, the things that some of the issues that we're dealing with, some of the tribalism that we've been dealing with, is going to become less of a thing once obviously if we could somehow help, at least in the United States as an example, right? Europe, right? Other places, if we could just, help the level of the ego go from 3.75 to 4.5, that would be awesome, right? Obviously, it'd be great if we could, like, that's a thing that I'd love to over time work on, is helping us, the collective percentage, the median, level of ego across developed countries to start creeping up, because I believe they've crept down over the last
Yeah. And I think so,
5 to 10 years.
which is probably it's like
I think it's social media. It's the age of information, right? We got overwhelmed and we all went tribalistic and we all got insecure and we hung close to our little groups because it's like, this is messy and I'm a little afraid of what's going on. And then the social media things knew how to hit our, push our buttons.
which is the correlation between the rise and the drop in ego,
Right.
and also the rise and drop in life expectancy. Obviously, they're different.
Right.
They're both symptoms of the same core issues.
Yeah.
But like the life expectancy thing is a thing.
Yeah.
That you get that data on that's really accessible, whereas the ego thing is
But
not as clear.
how much? So I haven't studied that life expectancy stuff as much,
Yeah.
probably as you have, right? But I'd be curious how much of that was impacted by COVID.
It was before COVID.
Okay.
That was the thing.
All right.
I guess it's like 20, 15 years.
Yeah.
It's not like 2 years ago.
Okay.
It could have gone back up. I don't know. I heard that somewhere. Makes sense though. So this says, okay, so there's 3 things it gave me. One of them doesn't really make sense, so I'll ask you 2. What percentage of U.S. workers report being satisfied with their jobs?
22%.
62%,
That's awesome.
which is the highest level since the survey's inception in '87.
That's awesome.
But I do think since COVID,
Yeah.
that people are more generally satisfied with their situations.
Yeah.
For better or for worse.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of, and there's a dimension of gratitude.
Right.
It's be like, you know what, I am happy where I am. This is cool. And then there's also on the flip side, there's a dimension of complacency, where just being like, this is fine.
Yeah.
I'm happy here. I'm more risk averse now. Right? There's 2 ways to look at that.
Yeah.
And I think that both of them play a role in that. And then the passion for work. What percentage of U.S. employees describe themselves as passionate about their jobs?
That's probably what I was leaning more into,
That is.
like 22%.
You said 20%.
No, earlier I gave you 20%, but then I just said, when you asked me that first question, I said 22%, and I was probably leaning more towards the.
Sure, you want to change your answer?
Yeah, I'll go 20%.
20%.
Geez, could I read between lines?
That was very good social awareness. Good job. You get a gold star.
I'm working on my level of ego.
So that's that number.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 20.
Is that a Gallup or a Pew?
That was Zippia.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, you want to go to the sources?
No, that's okay.
You sure?
Yeah.
That was 2023 on 20%.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's accurate. And I feel like among Gen Z, among people that or my friends or whatever, it seems like satisfaction is higher,
Mm-hmm.
but passion is lower.
Mm-hmm.
probably relative to that. Because I don't know, I don't have any friends that I can think of outside of 90, except skews things, outside of 90 that I would say are passionate about what they do,
Yeah.
about who they work for. A lot of them are, they're like, well, let's start this. I should start this business. I'm thinking about starting this business. And I have a lot of those conversations. Like, what do you think of this idea? And some of them it's like, oh, that's cool. And some of it's like, you just want novelty. You just want something else to do.
Right.
So you're not in it for
Yeah.
the reasons that we talk about when we speak to and about founders.
Yep.
Like, oh, is that what you want to build something?
Right.
And it's just like, they're just bored.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, are you willing to dedicate at least 10? Because this is another interesting one, which we keep talking about when you do research. But I mean, if you're going to be successful as a founder, I'm sure there are exceptions out there, but you got to count on it. Are you willing to do this for 10 plus years?
Yeah. And some of the founders I know that are younger are just like, they're over it.
Yeah.
For, a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
And I think they lose that spark. It kind of just beats them down. And
Yeah.
they're like, they had an idea, they made money off of it, and they're like, this risk is this burden is not fun.
No.
And they don't have the systems around them to support them. They don't have, they really feel like they're just doing it on their own.
Yeah.
Which is
something we want to help with.
Yeah. So I think we covered the state of things pretty well. I guess just to start sort of bringing this to a close.
Yeah.
What lessons do you think are super important that we've learned, that we've experienced over the past year plus, that people going through stage 4?
Right.
What do you think the challenges are going to be, given the nature of things, given the way the system's working right now? It's going to be different than the challenges we faced.
Mm-hmm.
What do you foresee those looking like?
For us?
Well, I'm saying for someone that's entering into the chapter that we just went through.
Yeah.
What would be your word of advice? What would the hard things that we went through that didn't get us, that we don't want other people to fall victim to, fall prey to?
Well, I don't know if I'd frame it slightly different if I with you.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, the reality in terms of stage 4, right, is that you're going, when you enter into the next stage, it's inevitable that you're going to have leadership changes, right? And some of your leaders are going to be ready for that next stage, and some of your leaders are not going to be ready for that next stage. They're just not, right? And that sucks. It's hard, especially if they've been with you for a long time, and so for some it's like I'm okay not being on reporting to the founder or the CEO anymore. And then for others, it's like, well, no, I think I should be that next person, and they don't get it. And, we had one individual leave us this year to start his own, who didn't make it to the next level and went and started his own company. That's awesome. Right. So I think, as much as you love for every single person to grow with you as the company grows, and to grow at the speed that you need to they need to grow at in order to be, able to sort of lead at a senior level during that next stage. Just have to be, you have to be honest about it all. Because otherwise, it's not fair to them. It's not fair to all the other ideal stakeholders, whether it's your investors or their peers. And so, like it's like self and others awareness. Stage awareness is really is super important.
This is a version of self-awareness
It
in
is.
that case.
Yeah, it's just a company version of self-awareness. And so, you know, you know, I'm guilty of loving our own cooking, but, you know, I think understanding your stage, taking the assessment, right? Taking a look at how you're doing across the
We'll
course.
link to the assessment.
Huh?
We'll link to the assessment.
Yeah, and the
Yep.
core competency,
Core,
right?
core
Understand.
competencies and assessment.
Yep.
Yeah. In the description.
Yeah. Did you just break the fourth wall?
But a little bit. It's a little bit talking to the audience. I'm talking to Steven. So, but that, yeah. So I don't forget after this to make that note. Yep.
So, yeah, I think, you know, that's my advice. It's what we teach. Um, you know, I think that, as you move from each stage to the next stage, you know, what you want to figure out is, you know, how do I get sort of, you know, 80 to 90% of my team to be in the appropriate seats, right? And that means, you know, obviously you need the stratum, you need the seats, and then you just need to be honest about what's going on. And then as a part of that, right, having quarterly conversations, talking about what's working, what's not working.
And being very honest in those conversations.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they're two-way conversations, right? It's how am I doing as your leader and your coach, and how are you doing in terms of sort of mastering the things that are essential at this for this particular seat at this particular time, given you know where we are and where we're going. Um, and you know, and ultimately, you know, you know, we talk every single week at the C-suite. Every single week we talk about, you know, is anybody struggling? Or we got 190 some odd people. Is anybody struggling? What, you know, what do we need to do? You know, we're at the place where, you know, you knock on wood, wherever, but
Go into the fire.
right here, right? Knock on wood. You know, we got 95% of people are sitting, you know, good humans, believe in what we're doing, good core value fits, and they're sitting comfortably in their seat. And um, and so as you hit these stages, right, you have to be honest about where you are, where everybody is, and if you try to move faster than your organization's ready for, um, there's a lot of collateral damage. And I don't like collateral damage. I think that's bad on us as leaders.
And there's in terms of the moving at that certain pace, which is both absolute in terms of like growth rate, but also relative in terms of the market.
Mhm.
Because if someone, I really like growing at 80%, and then everything's growing at 40%, they can't just go leave and join the place that's growing at 80, because then that's going to be a bigger change than staying at the same place, going to another place that's 40.
Right.
So it's all understanding that, being consistent with that, moving it right 90 days at a time, doing that march,
Right.
so that you can make sure everybody is comfortable in that environment. Because if you really open up the floodgates, go really fast, go twice as fast relative to what you are normally doing, relative to what the market's doing, you're going to really feel left behind. Then you act rashly, you fire a lot of people,
Right.
then you go out and hire those people that really like to perform that way, and then you revert back to normal, and then those people don't work, and then they're not happy.
Right.
And then that
now
makes company.
you got cultural issues, and it's like, you know, you go too fast, you hire too fast, you don't have proper frameworks, mental models, if you will, for thinking about how the organization scales. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know is, you know, you're doing a layoff of, you know, 20 or 30 people, 20, 30% of your people. And as you know, you know, that's 100% on the leadership team, right? And yet it ends up being on those 20 to 30% of your people. And that's so that's, you know, you know, we're always thinking about making sure we're not being stupid, and overly aggressive and having collateral damage like that. And because because it just reflects on me. And, you know, I've talked about it so much, I worry that someday I'll face it, because I was stupid. Um, but, and because I'm sort of karma oriented, but I think, this is why slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? It takes time. Get your act together, feel like you've got your act together, relatively speaking, across the entire organization, up and down, right? Have your frameworks in place, have your systems for talking and staying connected, get solid, don't go too fast, don't go too slow, because if you go too slow, right, either the market's gonna pass you by, you know, or people are gonna
slow
leave
down.
because they just don't have any opportunity to grow, right? So you got to go hit that Goldilocks level. And, and that's why, I think one of the things that I believe, I have never done the research on this, right? But I believe CEOs, founders and CEOs should set growth rates, right? This is what we're going to do, and get everybody aligned, and then go do it. Right? And you need to decide whether it's a 10% rate or a 20% rate or whatever it is that you think is doable and makes sense for your culture, your market, your company, the economy. Yeah, there are a lot of factors in there, right? But you know, just you know, not having a target to me is unhealthy.
What stage do you think that people should have a clear idea of what their rough growth rate should be?
Well, obviously, I don't think they should have a clear idea in stages 1 or stage 2, right? I would argue that in stage 3, you should start, having a decent sense for it. Clearly, stage 4 and stage 5, you should be setting growth rates.
So stage 3 is when you should start figuring out what that is.
Yeah.
And then by stage 5, you should be pretty solid on what
Yeah,
it is.
because in stage 3, you're stages 1 and 2 is you have a business. Stages 4 and 5 is you're in stage 5 you have a company. In stage 4, a lot of times you have a company. Stages 1 and 2, there's a business. So stage 3 is that transition to, hey, right, I've got product market fit. I'm capable of hiring reasonably decent talent, right? I am now proving that I can scale. Right? That's the game you start playing in stage 3. Prove you can scale. Prove you're capable as a founder, as a leader of scaling, right? Of attracting and retaining and putting systems in place. And that's the stage where, you know, you don't have to, they don't have to be tight, right? But 50 to 100%, because you should be growing reasonably well in stage 3.
All right. Wrap this up with 2 questions.
Okay.
First, if you were to sum this chapter up in a sentence, what would that be?
This chapter
This chapter, this year, however you want to. Could be 16 months for the sake of this,
Right.
whatever makes it work better for.
What we talk about, we talk about the chapters that we've had as a company, and I believe we're going into what I call 94.0, right? So this is the end of 93.0. I would say that the last year has been getting ready for 4.0, right? It's hiring, putting in place.
It's a horrible name for a chapter of a book.
I know. All right. So,
I'm not letting you get away with that.
I know.
We have chapters 1, 2, getting ready for 4, and 4.
I mean, I don't want to say, getting ready for stage 5, because I think we're
in stage 5.
We're in stage 5, but not like confidently.
We haven't executed with stage 5.
Yeah.
That's how I would think about it.
Yeah. Getting ready for AI. We've been working on it for years, right? We're not ready yet because we're taking this bloody seriously, but it's more than that, right? Because I think it's also, we're finally getting ready. We're finally developing the muscles associated with launching new products,
Yeah.
right? So I think if you look at 2024, it was the year of taking, well, 2024 was the year of taking product and engineering to the next level, without question. 2025 is going to be about not only doing that, but taking marketing to the next level, without question, right? So I don't know if that's a good chapter name.
It's not.
Okay.
It works.
Okay.
So you say something like building the foundations for launching or something like that. Foundations, I don't know, whatever. That's the idea. I wasn't thinking about anything. I was just watching you struggle.
You like me driving the struggle bus?
But you also kind of answered the next question, which is going to be, what are you most excited for about 2025?
I'm excited with nervousness about revising our commercial model. So that's a big, big change. I'm excited and nervous about launching our AI companion, which we haven't talked a lot about, right? I'm excited and nervous about, starting to incorporate AI into the tools. I'm excited and nervous about Work 9.0. I'm excited and nervous about our positioning, revising our positioning so that we can do a better job of helping people appreciate why we deeply believe that everybody in the company should be on the same operating system, so that you can see what's working, what's not working. Everybody gets the bigger picture, and you're giving everybody the opportunity not just to participate in the game you're playing, but to lean into sharing what success looks like for them, and what the company can do, what their companies can do to help them grow and feel like they're thriving. So the knowledge management portal initiative, right? It's a big year.
So you would describe your current mood as anxious excitement.
Yes. Yeah. With just as much of anxiety as excitement. Yeah. We got a lot going on.
I'm not anxious. Excited.
Yeah. Well, I got to carry it on my, right?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just kind of watch.
Laugh.
I just sit in this chair. Yep. And have it on, on the TV.
Falls on his face.
But all the things that we're anxious about are within our control. That's why I don't feel
Yeah.
anxious about it.
No, you're, and I appreciate you, helping me with a more rounded perspective on this stuff. So once again, I, love and appreciate you.
We're ending on that. That's cool. I love and appreciate you too.
All right.
Better wrap it. That's an awful way to end this. All right. I hope this was a fun end of year holiday special. Yeah, it's coming out. I think this is gonna be released between Christmas and New Year's.
Okay.
So it'll be an interesting time here. Park City is crazy in that time of year.
Yep.
So
Looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah.
Looking forward to 2025.